I've noticed we're losing subscribers. Not the YouTube kind, but the kind that swore they'd be in my life forever. Funny how that works. One day you're surrounded by people who claim to love you, and the next, you're watching them walk away like you were just another phase in their lives. By the way, if you're here, do me a favor, subscribe. It's free, and unlike some people in my life, you won't regret sticking around. I exposed my mother-in-law at my own wedding. I was engaged to a wonderful man, kind, thoughtful, and the love of my life. He wasn't from around here. He had come to this country for college, and that's where we met. From the moment we got together, everything between us felt natural and easy. He treated me with a level of love and respect I had never known before. I couldn't have asked for a better partner. But there was one problem. A massive one. His mother. She despised me. And she never tried to hide it. From the very first moment we met, she made it crystal clear that she didn't approve of me. Not because of anything I had done, not because we were incompatible, but simply because I was white. She had always wanted her son to marry someone from their own culture, and since I wasn't, she saw me as an intruder, an outsider, someone to be ignored. The first time I met her, we had gone over to their house for dinner. I had been nervous but hopeful, determined to make a good impression. But the second I walked in, she snubbed me. I greeted her politely, smiling, trying to be warm, but she acted as if I wasn't even there. Not a glance, not a nod, not a single word. Instead, she spent the entire evening speaking in her native language to her husband and my fiancé, deliberately shutting me out, even though I knew she spoke perfect English. The silence at the dinner table was suffocating. My fiancé tried his best to bring me into the conversation, but she refused to acknowledge me. And then, just to drive the point home, when I reached for a plate, she snatched it away and served her husband and son first, making sure I was the very last to get anything. I felt humiliated, unwelcome, like I was trespassing in my own relationship. On the way home, my fiancé was horrified. He apologized over and over again, furious at his mother's behavior, assuring me that he wouldn't let it continue. If things don't improve, he said, we'll limit contact with her. I could see he was just as upset as I was. Maybe even more. But things didn't improve. Every time I saw her, it was the same, cold, dismissive, distant. At family gatherings, she would make sly comments in her native language, laughing while pointing at my hair, my features, my clothes. Once, she looked at my hair and said something that made the whole room chuckle. I asked my fiancé what she had said. He hesitated. Eventually, he admitted she had compared my hair to a bird's nest and questioned if I even knew how to take care of myself. Another time, she made a comment about my nose, loudly, in front of everyone. My fiancé immediately jumped in to argue with her, but when I asked him to translate, he just sighed and tried to change the subject. Later, he admitted she had mocked my pale skin too. It wasn't just exclusion anymore. It was outright cruelty. And the worst part? I wasn't some lazy, spoiled girlfriend. I worked hard. I had been the valedictorian of my college class. I had a better paying job than my fiancé. I contributed equally to our expenses, surprised him with thoughtful gifts, and even learned to cook his favorite dishes from his culture, trying my best to embrace and honor his background. I did everything I could to prove my love for him. I even tried winning over his mother. I bought her and his father thoughtful Christmas gifts, spent time picking out things I knew they would love. And yet, we were never invited to their Christmas celebrations. His father was kind to me, but his mother? It was never enough for her. Nothing I did could ever be enough. I held all of this inside for so long. But on our wedding day, I decided I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. So when I stood up to give my speech in front of all our friends and family, including his mother, I told the truth. And I exposed her for everything she had done. Looked at it with hatred and threw it away later. I overheard her telling someone else that it was cheap and ugly, which matched my taste. Things like that truly got to me. It wasn't limited to his parents' house. At larger family gatherings such as parties or weddings, she did the same. She'd scowl at me from across the room before whispering to other relatives, pointing at me and discussing me. If I tried to approach her, she simply ignored me and walked away. It was so obvious yet so degrading. She made a point of physically turning away from me, letting everyone know she rejected me. At one party, I noticed her complimenting another relative's daughter-in-law, remarking how nice and conventional she was, all while utterly ignoring me. It felt as if she was trying to demonstrate to everyone how much more superior this other woman was than me, simply because she was from the same nation as them. What was more infuriating was that I knew she spoke English fluently. She was a kindergarten teacher, for God's sake. She purposefully spoke in her native language to exclude me, making me feel like an outsider in my own fiancé's family. It was as if she used language barriers as a weapon. I realized that if I truly wanted to connect with my fiancé on a deeper level, I needed to understand his culture, including his language. I wanted to be able to share that aspect of his life with him. I figured it would bring us closer. I decided to study his language in secret. I anticipated surprising him one day by engaging in a full conversation in his language. I wanted him to see how much I cared. But deep down, another part of me wanted to know exactly what his mother was saying about me. I dedicated myself to studying. 5 months of relentless practice. YouTube videos, language apps, speaking out loud to perfect my pronunciation. I focused on conversations, not just learning random phrases. At family events, I pretended I didn't understand, but I listened carefully. And what I heard, it was devastating. Far worse than I had imagined. The moment that truly shattered me was when my fiancé told his mother we were engaged. He had her on speakerphone in the car, and she instantly started ranting about how he was marrying a white woman, how their ancestors would be rolling in their graves. That phrase hit me like a punch. It made me feel like I was doing something inherently wrong just by existing. She claimed I was too modern to be a good wife or mother. She spat out that I would raise my children to be spoiled and disrespectful. It cut deep. Later, when we visited his parents to discuss wedding plans, his father was overjoyed, but his mother, cold as ever. She started ranting in her language again, but this time I understood everything. She tried to convince my fiancé to reconsider the marriage, claiming an astrologer had foreseen a black hole in the family because of me. She outright declared I was infertile. Then she complained about how many of my white relatives would be at the wedding and suggested removing some from the guest list. My fiancé stood his ground, and they had a heated argument. And to top it all off, she lied to my father-in-law, saying I bragged about making more money than my fiancé to humiliate him. I tried to extend an olive branch. I invited her to wedding dress shopping, hoping it could be a bonding moment. But she turned it into another opportunity to tear me down. Every dress I tried on, she had something cruel to say. Eye rolls, scoffs, passive-aggressive remarks. And when I finally found a dress I loved, the one that made my mother and sister tear up, she looked at me and sneered in her native language, "Horrible." My mother and sister were swooning over me, telling me how stunning I looked, while she kept picking at everything. I stepped away to the restroom, and while I was gone, she insulted my body in front of my sister, claiming the dress didn't suit me. That was it. I broke down in the dressing room. Not just sadness, fury, frustration. All my efforts to be kind felt like they had been for nothing. I felt utterly defeated. And that's when I decided, enough was enough. I was done being the quiet, polite outsider. I was going to make a statement. And I would do it in a way she'd never forget. The wedding day revenge. The big day arrived. Everything was perfect. I was marrying the love of my life, surrounded by friends and family. And when it was time for the speeches, I did something unexpected. I started in English, thanking our guests. Then I switched, flawlessly, into my husband's native language. You should have seen the shock on their faces. My husband's eyes welled up. His family was stunned. I explained that learning their language had been my wedding gift to my husband, a way to show how much I loved and respected him. My husband was so moved he walked over and kissed me in the middle of my speech. Then I turned to my mother-in-law. I looked her dead in the eyes and, in perfect fluency, thanked her, sarcastically. I thanked her for her rejection, for every insult, every attempt to exclude me. I revealed all the cruel things she had said, including how she claimed I was infertile and how she trashed my wedding dress. The entire room was silent. My mother-in-law's face turned crimson. She was mortified. I didn't stop there. I addressed her false claims about my income, making it clear she had lied to paint me in a bad light. Then I made my final statement, still speaking her language so there would be no room for misunderstanding. If her behavior continued, she would have no access to any future grandchildren. I wouldn't tolerate my children being subjected to such hatred and discrimination. My husband was so proud of me. He told me later that he had never felt more love for me than in that moment when I stood up for myself and our future. My mother-in-law was fuming. She stormed out of the reception after a furious argument with my father-in-law. But the best part? Other relatives came up to me afterward, praising my language skills and telling me how thoughtful it was that I learned their language. For the first time I felt accepted. Truly part of the family. And I loved the rest of the night. When we returned from our honeymoon, I had a dozen missed calls from my mother-in-law. My husband said he'd support whatever I decided, ignore her or give her another chance. At first I wanted to ignore her. But then I thought, why not see what she had to say? So I called her back. And I let her speak. When I finally met with my mother-in-law, she looked different. Nervous even. There was hesitation in her movements, a slight tremble in her voice, nothing like the confident, condescending woman I had grown accustomed to. And then for the first time she apologized. She admitted that after the wedding, after my speech, she had been furious. But as time passed, and after hearing from multiple relatives, she had been forced to reflect on her actions. It became clear to her just how unfair and cruel she had been to me. She acknowledged that I had made a real effort to embrace their culture, to respect their traditions, even to learn their language. And she had chosen to disregard all of it. However, there were parts of her apology that felt incomplete. She skimmed over some of the worst things she had said, like her awful remarks about my wedding dress or her claim that I was infertile. She brushed past those as if they were minor details, when in reality, they had cut the deepest. But still I could see that she was trying. She explained that my husband was her only child, and that she had always envisioned him marrying someone from their home country. She had held on to that expectation so tightly that when I came into the picture, she saw me as a threat rather than a daughter-in-law. I listened carefully, taking in every word before finally responding. I accepted her apology, but cautiously. I told her that while I appreciated her willingness to change, I wasn't going to blindly believe everything would suddenly be fine. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. Surprisingly, after that, we started talking more. She told me stories about my husband as a child, ones I had never heard before, and for the first time, it felt like we were actually connecting. Of course, not everything was perfect. Old habits die hard. For instance, one day I cooked dinner and she tried to compliment me, sort of, "This dish is actually quite good, for a white person's attempt. Almost as good as how we make it." Better than an outright insult, I suppose, but still a reminder that we weren't quite there yet. I know some of you might have wanted me to cut her off completely, to keep fighting, but I made my stand at the wedding. I exposed her cruelty in front of everyone. I made it clear that I would not tolerate being treated like an outsider in my own marriage. And now, I just want peace. A drama-free family life. I also believe her own relatives' reactions finally got through to her. She admitted that after the wedding, many of them called to tell her she was in the wrong. I think that, more than anything, forced her to confront her behavior. That said, I'm not naive. I'm giving her a chance. But one slip, one step back into her old ways, and I will not hesitate to put her in her place again. And now for the biggest update. I'm pregnant. My husband and I are overjoyed to start this new chapter of our lives. We cannot wait to meet our little one, and I'm happy to say that my relationship with my mother-in-law has continued to improve. She's more accepting, more engaged, she even spends time with me willingly. She offers to help with things, gives me advice, some of it unsolicited of course, and actually seems to want to be a part of our lives. My own mother and sister have been amazing as well. Both moms check in on me constantly, making sure I'm feeling okay. They've even been working together to set up the nursery, something I never imagined would happen. It's honestly beautiful to see them bonding. Of course, there are still little reminders that things aren't perfect. Just the other day we were discussing baby names and I mentioned a few that I thought were adorable. My mother-in-law scoffed. "Those sound so American. Wouldn't you want something a little more cultured?" It was subtle, disguised as a simple suggestion. But I caught it. That old bias still lurking just beneath the surface. Luckily, my husband remains my biggest supporter. He's been beyond excited about the baby, and he's relieved to see his mother making an effort. As for my father-in-law, he's been nothing but wonderful. He's already building a baby rocker for the nursery and has promised to make a treehouse once our little one is old enough. Overall, things are so much better than they were before. I'm hopeful, optimistic. I want to believe my mother-in-law has truly changed, and that she will be a positive influence in our child's life. No more drama. No more cruelty. Just family, love, and a fresh start. And for the first time, I truly feel like I belong. Family dynamics can be messy, especially when cultural differences, expectations, and deep-seated biases come into play. But this journey has taught me, and hopefully you, some valuable lessons. Stand your ground. Never let anyone, not even family, disrespect you or make you feel like an outsider in your own life. Speak up for yourself when necessary. Growth takes time. People don't change overnight. If someone is making an effort to be better, it's okay to give them a chance, but always with boundaries. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Accepting an apology doesn't erase the past, but it does allow you to move forward. However, trust must be rebuilt, not given freely. Your happiness comes first. At the end of the day, you deserve peace, love, and respect. Never compromise your well-being for the sake of keeping the peace. Hope for the best, but be prepared. While people can change, old habits die hard. Stay hopeful, but never hesitate to stand up for yourself again if needed. Does this story resonate with you? Have you ever dealt with difficult in-laws or challenging family relationships? Share your experiences in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories and discussions about real-life challenges and personal growth. Let's build a supportive community together.